Live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. We get you set for a new National Football League season. We are coming down to the final 2 weeks of training camp. NFL preseason weekend number 3 is on the horizon. And the next week, you need to make your roster cuts to finalize the 53-man roster to get ready for a new season. But even DRS, as we forecast the future and get ready for a new season in the National Football League, there is always time to reminisce and look back. Tua Tagovailoa, speaking with Dan Le Batard about his time in Miami, was asked about his former head coach in Brian Flores in the difference in mentality between his new head man in Mike McDaniel, seems rather jovial, and Brian Flores, now the defensive coordinator in Minnesota. Here's what Tua had to say. Quote, "If you woke up every morning and I told you that you suck at what you did, that you don't belong, then someone comes and tells you you are the best fit for this, how would it make you feel?" Donnie, how would it make you feel if every day we welcome in the early line and I said, here's my co-host, Donnie Rightside, he sucks, and then Dubs Anderson filled in on Friday and he said, welcome into the early line, mate. Donnie Rightside is here, and he looks pretty good. How would it make you feel?
I feel like I got a little Brian Flores in me, by the way. Like, I feel like that would be my coaching style. Everybody is terrible. You know, hey, you threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, but that second quarter, that blitz pickup that you did not get over there and took the sack, yeah, that's really hampering the efforts. But we understand this. There's always that even line. We've all had coaches out there. There's a right time to kick your player in the rear, and there's a right time to grip him up and tell him that everything's going to be okay. You're doing a great job. Keep up the good work here. But it feels like the Brian Flores move in Miami when Tua Tagovailoa came on board, it was like he must have, like, before the draft, just like, you can't give me this player. Don't you give me this player. Oh, no, I just wound up with this player. Like, what would be the goal of you picking a franchise guy in the top 10 and saying, even if you didn't agree with the pick, I'm going to sabotage this guy's career and hopefully I'll get fired because of it as well? It just doesn't make any sense. Once the players are on your team, it's your job to coach them up and make them feel like they can run through a wall for you. The fact that a quarterback who's young and is basically building on confidence that you're tearing down every day is a wild scene. But that's what happens sometimes in the NFL, Ben. Some guys aren't long for the head coaching position. Eric Bieniemy must have been a wonderful coordinator, but he can't relate to the players and be a head coach. That's why he never got a chance. Brian Flores, who we thought was going to be a great head coach in that move from New England down to Miami. And he said, well, wow, why didn't this work out? Well, if you're sabotaging your own superstar players, you're not going to get another job in the NFL. It's simple as that. And by the way, like when Tua Tagovailoa shows up, I never met the guy in person, but just watching and him being around all those athletes at Alabama, he just looks like one of those guys, nice guy you want to hang out with, family man, takes care of business, and can be an elite player on the field. How could you try to sabotage that when he's your own player? It wasn't you like, hey, I'm the defensive coordinator for the Raiders. I'm just going to call Tua every day and try to sabatage his psychology. Yeah. But his head coach doing this, it's such a wild scene, and it's crazy that Tua even brought that up to an extent he did. I like the freshness there, saying, you know what? My other coach was bad. I love my coach. Here's the 2 differences. One said I was terrible. One built me up. Now I got a big contract. Which one worked out in my favor? So good for Tua.
It's a good point as well, DRS. The transparency is what we appreciate from our athletes at times, and we don't often see it. So when we do, it's refreshing. Some might say, why is Tua talking about this? Why is he still angry about this multiple years later? I thought it was the perspective of where Miami is now under Tua's guidance. Of course, last year was as good as it gets for Tua Tagovailoa in his time in the National Football League. In fact, his 2 years under Mike McDaniel in 2022 and 2023 have been the best of his 5-year career in the NFL. Last year, Tua Tagovailoa throwing for 4,624 passing yards, the most leading all of the NFL. 29 touchdowns to 14 interceptions, had a completion percentage better than 69%. That is pretty nice. In his first year under McDaniel, more than 3,500 passing yards, 25 TDs to 8 interceptions, the best touchdown to interception ratio in the National Football League at the quarterback spot. So there are so many different wrinkles to this conversation in terms of coaching mentality, and Mike McDaniel is just a more positive guy than many coaches you will find around the National Football League, but also the wizardry that is Mike McDaniel and how he coordinates in schemes in offense. We have no doubts about what the Fins can do and how many points they can put up on the scoreboard. They scored 70 in 2023 early in September against the Denver Broncos. The question is not offense, and Tua is the beneficiary of that. You have Tyreek Hill. You have Jalen Waddle. You have talent all around the quarterback position. And Tua Tagovailoa got paid to the tune of more than $53 million this offseason per year as well. So, of course, Tua Tagovailoa is happy with how the current landscape is in South Florida.
And also, this gets back to the point, Ben, we see new hires come in all of the time. And sometimes it's interesting the way the quarterbacks change, guidelines for the actual team itself. You look at the Atlanta Falcons went with a defensive coach. Kirk Cousins comes to town, that's fine. But you draft Michael Penix. Sometimes you want that offensive mind in there to sort of smooth things over. Same thing in Chicago. I was surprised Matt Eberflus kept his job, not because I don't think he could be a good coach and he's a very good defensive coordinator, but you want that guy in the room 24/7 with your quarterback to teach him those angles. That's what you love about teams like, Brian Flores was the Miami Dolphins head coach, a defensive-minded guy. I don't like this quarterback. I'm going to pay him no mind and just rip him any chance I get, as opposed to McDaniel being the coach and being in the room saying, hey, I'm an offensive guy. I'm your guy. Tell me what you want to do. I will cater this offense around you. You're the perfect point guard for my offense. We'll tailor it towards you. So I'm always in agreement there that when you have the young quarterback, get the offensive coach as the head coach here, if that's the way you want to go. And it's worked out in spades. Has it been a championship for the Miami Dolphins? No. But if you look at the Flores years compared to the McDaniel years, that offense is electric. Why? Because the confidence in the young quarterback that turned into a star player in the NFL, and maybe he does make the playoffs and make a deep run this year for Tua Tagovailoa.
And that's the interesting perspective. We'll talk more about head coaching mentality, what it can mean for a team a little bit later on throughout this show. But being a head coach is about the X's and O's and having your football acumen. But more than anything, you are a manager of your entire coaching staff, trusting and divulging in your staff to make the right decisions and everybody around your roster. That mentality, that personality is incredibly important to be a successful head coach. You know what else is? Making the playoffs and winning postseason games. Both years under Mike McDaniel, Miami has made the postseason. But it's been a long time since the Dolphins won a playoff game, the year 2000. They've only made 5 playoff appearances since 2000. That is the charge this year in Miami. Win a playoff game. More around the NFL next. So it's the juxtaposition of how a head coach approaches a young quarterback. And it was exemplified on Saturday when the Washington Commanders took on the Miami Dolphins. We just heard Tua Tagovailoa's thoughts on his new head coach in Mike McDaniel, the confidence he has inspired into his game, and the returns it has led to in terms of the statistical output, the overall performance. Still needed to answer those postseason questions, but also the monetary value into a Tagovailoa's bank account, at least to start out outside the nation's capital in Washington. There has been nothing but confidence and supreme confidence in the rookie quarterback, Jayden Daniels, the number 2 overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the 2023 Heisman Trophy winner from LSU. He has been the starting quarterback. He has been number 1 in terms of the QB room for the Commanders all offseason and training camp long. Made official yesterday. Jayden Daniels will start week number 1 for Washington on the road against Tampa Bay. Dan Quinn letting everybody know that Jayden Daniels is at command of this Washington franchise from the very start.
It wasn't too long ago where we had that video from inside the locker room at Arizona State where they were cleaning out his locker after he transferred. Oh, that guy trash. Get him out of here, to go to LSU and absolutely dominate, to now be an NFL player and look the part. Absolutely. It's not like Drake May is like, ooh, I wonder who's going to be the quarterback here over Jacoby Brissett. Like, you got to be kidding me here. Like, Drake May should be running away with that, but apparently in practices, he hasn't been all that good. That's the complete opposite here when we're talking about Jayden Daniels. This guy's been phenomenal in practice, great in the preseason games, and the prototype of the quarterbacks that we want in the future. An active arm, and you can't sack him. Why? Because he's faster than everybody on the football field. The future is bright for Washington, but just getting back to the coach speak, a defensive-minded head coach absolutely saying to himself, I am going to put you in the best possible position. I'm going to get you a creative offensive coordinator so you can hit the ground running with some innovative concepts and use some things like your feet that are going to put the defense in peril. Love to see it. I think they handled it great. And also, from a Washington Commanders perspective, it felt like they signed a brand new football team across the board on offense and defense. in terms of saying, I'm going to start a young, talented rookie quarterback. Let's make sure we have a solid defense. Let's make sure we have solid coaching here. Let's make sure he has weapons to throw to in a good running back, game where you have an ultimate third down back in Austin Eckler, and Robinson there can be that hammer early on. I love what they've done to put those surrounding pieces so he can have a good September and October and build towards his future by not setting a bad example by going, hey, coach, every time I drop back, I'm either getting sacked or nobody's wide open. This is what you're supposed to do. Unlike what we saw to Brian Flores and talked about, talk up your young quarterback, give him the tools to succeed, and let him go. And that's what's going to happen.
I mean, Donnie, the vibes around Washington at this moment are so substantially higher entering 2024 than they have been for the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the 24 years under Dan Snyder. Not only do you have the new ownership group spearheaded by Josh Harris, you have a good head coach in Dan Quinn, who has won as a head coach in Atlanta before and has the acumen of that pedigree as a coordinator. You bring in Cliff Kingsbury, and you trust in the future. Listen, the Commanders' win total this year is just 6.5. The over has the juice. Are we arguing that Washington is going to be a playoff team? No. But are there surprises each and every year around the National Football League? Yes, and I would keep an eye on the Commanders to make a relative amount of noise. Even 8-9 would be a wildly successful year under a rookie quarterback with a new head coach, new OC, entirely new coaching staff, and a reinvented roster as well. You would feel great at the end of 2024, entering 2025 with Jaden Daniels in command. He has the second best price to an offensive rookie of the year at 6-1 behind Caleb Williams, the number one overall pick, who is a plus 120 favorite. 16.5 is the passing touchdowns prop for Daniels. His passing yardage prop from the season-long perspective, just over 3,000 yards. And as we have seen, DRS, one possession against the Jets in his preseason debut looked pretty good. 2 of 3, 45 yards. A dropped-in dime to De'Ami Brown. A rushing touchdown last week against Miami on Saturday. 10 of 12 in 2 drives for more than 70 yards as well. He has not only had the confidence and the belief in him by his coaching staff, so far so good, albeit preseason, he has backed it up in his production.
Yeah, and he doesn't have to be the end-all, be-all that football team, as we stated. They surrounded him with a quality team, a quality head coach, and a quality offensive coordinator where he can make those wow plays during the game that can make the difference, as opposed to, he just made a wow play, Ben, down 31-3 in the fourth quarter. They'll be competitive, which is saying a lot in that division where the Giants, we don't know if they're going to be competitive, question marks around the Cowboys, and then the Eagles sit up top. I'm looking forward to Washington.
Another edition of Win Total Tuesday, live right here on a Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid and all across that Spiz Grizz network. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. Our focus on this Tuesday now and for the second half hour of this second hour on TEL is the NFC West. So let's set the stage right here by looking at the 4 teams in this division. The San Francisco 49ers, a minus 190 favorite to win the divisional crown once again, as they did a season ago and the season prior to that. Looking for 3 consecutive divisional championships in 2024. The second best price of any team to win any of the 8 divisions around the National Football League. Only the Chiefs have a better price to win the AFC West at minus 230. But just because San Francisco is such a strong favorite to win the divisional title does not mean we are not expecting some postseason contenders from the rest of this crew. The LA Rams, a playoff team once again a season ago. Win total is 8.5, minus or plus 4. I don't even know what we're looking at. Plus 330 here, to win the NFC West this year around. Seattle at 7-1. And the Arizona Cardinals, yes, a long price to win the NFC West at 13-1, but still maybe able to make some noise within the division and their overall record. DRS overall, you look at the NFC West big picture. What's your first thought?
It's the Niners. I mean, that's the first thought that comes to mind. They should win this division. But again, it is a football season. You're going to have injuries. Other teams are going to step up. And also, just take a look at the quarterbacks here, right? Brock Purdy for the 49ers playing for a contract this season. We expect big things from him. Los Angeles Rams, Matthew Stafford, veteran guy. We thought he might have been out of gas just 2 or 3 years ago, but looks like revived in that offense, gets a couple of good young wide receivers, and away he goes. But starting the year, maybe with some hamstring injuries on an already banged up guy, we know how that typically works out in some equations here. The Seattle Seahawks, Geno Smith, we'll see if he can still find his way and be a competent quarterback. But maybe the biggest question mark is the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray. From what we're hearing is, and here's what I liked about last year, Ben. We knew when he got injured that season wasn't going anywhere, right? But you wanted to see him get back late in the season. We thought maybe it was going to be, hey, play and see if we can trade you if you're healthy enough. But he played his way back into the starting lineup, which gave you that chance to see him on the field and get those rehabs. I want to say the rehab's not the right word, but almost like rehab snaps, if you will, saying, you know what, let me just get some plays here before I hit my off season and head into it. Now we're looking at maybe we're finding out the Kyler Murray of old, the quickness, the speed is back, which is so hard to defend during a National Football League season on a week-to-week basis. You see it week-to-week there with the Baltimore Ravens. Those guys that can get out of the pocket, you're saying, okay, Tuesday, put in the game plan, Wednesday, Thursday, and you see him Sunday, then you go back to a pocket quarterback the following week. But you are expecting big things out of Marvin Harrison. So I guess my wild card to watch out for would be the Cardinals, because if we can get a good version of Kyler Murray, why can't they compete with the Seahawks and the Rams here, Ben?
Yeah, Donnie, I think it's a really good point, right? And I think it speaks to the strength of this division overall. Arizona's 13-1, not expected by the odds makers to win the NFC West this year. The short NFC favorites in San Francisco at a 3-1 price spearhead this division. The 49ers are a co-favorite alongside Kansas City to win Super Bowl 59 at a 6-1 number. When those are the expectations in the odds outlook for a team atop your division, it's hard to think of actually contending for a divisional crown. But Arizona has a win total of 7.5. And yes, the under has the hefty juice at minus 152. But it goes to show you the floor in this division is not all that low. When you look at the Rams, 8.5 is the win total for L.A., over heavily juiced. For Seattle, 7.5 the win total, over heavily juiced. I think one of the biggest wild cards is actually Seattle, and not so much the Cards, but I think it overall speaks to how good this division can be and not a cakewalk by any means for the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of challenging pieces to get in the way of the Niners this year. But we'll talk about San Francisco up next, and until otherwise proven, the 49ers should be that heavy odds-on favorite to win the NFC West.
Exactly, and we'll get to the points where, you know what, showing up and winning a Super Bowl and getting that mojo back the next season usually works out well. Showing up to the Super Bowl and taking a loss, usually that lingering hangover tends to drift into the next season. We'll see if that happens for the 49ers, but it should be an entertaining West with, now you're looking at, typically it's like, no, Seahawks can be good, maybe with the Rams, but the Arizona Cardinals, the bottom feeders. If you're the bottom feeders winning 7 games, that means you got a competitive division, right, which also means if you're hunting for home field advantage in the NFL playoffs and you have no layups in your division, that makes things even tougher on the San Francisco 49ers.
The 49ers are no stranger to postseason contention and deep runs in the playoffs. But will it result in a Lombardi Trophy finally this year? We'll talk about it up next on the Early Line.
We're talking NFC West football right here on the Early Line, and we cannot wait, obviously, for the first week of the NFL season to really hit the ground running. And those San Francisco 49ers that we're going to focus on right now, they go up against the Jets night number 1. I believe it's a Monday night football game, which would be absolutely fantastic to watch that play out. Now, if we are taking a look at the 49ers, expectations are high. They're one of the most talented teams in the NFL, but question marks are going to arise. As you see that schedule up there, certainly when you finish at the top of your division and one of the better teams in football, typically you get a first-place schedule that's supposed to be much harder than a second, third, or fourth place. We get that. But we think on a week-to-week basis, the 49ers are going to be favored a heck of a lot more than their underdogs, right? What, maybe 3-4 games maximum on the road, if that's even possible, that they'll be dogs for. But let's take a look at the San Francisco 49ers entering into the season, because on paper, if everybody is there, week number 1 and healthy, this team probably should win the NFC. But we have question marks. Starting at left tackle, Trent Williams. He wants more money. hasn't practiced yet here. Brandon Ayuk, who was thought to be possibly on the trade block with a deal already worked out with multiple teams with draft compensation and also player compensation, looks like he's probably going to stay with the 49ers, but he hasn't practiced yet. Christian McCaffrey, your all-world running back that you re-upped with an extension in the offseason for big money because of how talented and how well he's produced for you, already injured with a calf injury to start the season. Now, he should be ready by week number 1. Ayuk, if he signs, he should be there week number 1. Trent Williams, the same thing. But you're missing a lot of time in training camp to bond with those players to get in form for game number 1. Because it's not as if you have a layup like, hey, the Carolina Panthers are coming to town week number 1. No, it's the New York Jets, one of the more talented teams in the country. And also, from a National Football League perspective, if you have a healthy Aaron Rodgers, that game is going to be interesting and so much fun to watch. But if you are looking at the Niners' outlook on the season itself, if we're trying to make the playoffs, yes, they're going to do that at a minus 420 price. If you're going to have a win total, it's 11.5. It should be that high. And keep in mind, 12-4 back in the day was a sensational record. Now you have the 17th game, so 12-5, certainly doable for a team as talented as the San Francisco 49ers. And to win the NFC, it's at a 3-1 price. Now, Ben and I were talking before the break on the 49ers because there is something to this. A team that has won a Super Bowl gets the lift in that offseason into next year. We're the defending champions. Let's do it again. But the team that lost looks like it. And the way the 49ers lost the Super Bowl, we should have had that. Maybe that lags into the offseason. Maybe that lags into training camp and needed a wake-up call early in the season. We'll find out if that takes place. But overall, that defense should still be really good. Floyd and Bosa rushing the pocket. You take a look at on the opposite sides for the cornerbacks. They have a solid secondary. Now, the question mark to me for the San Francisco 49ers coming into the season is that offensive line and how good it's going to be. Because let's just say Trent Williams is still holding out into the season. You get the Jets week number 1. That is a really good defense here. And we always know if you can't protect the quarterback, that offense won't be able to surgically strike down the field like we're used to here with a Shanahan system. But if you are being optimistic, and let's just say the 49ers show up week number 1, Deebo Samuel on one side, Brandon Ayuk on the other. You take a look at the tight end, it's George Kittle. Brock Purdy, who's a very good quarterback, and Christian McCaffrey, maybe the best overall running back in the sport at this time. That's kind of wild to line up. So, Ben, as we're looking at the 49ers, there's not a lot to dislike, but if you are starting to poke holes in this team, it comes from losing a Super Bowl and then having maybe not your best players in the lineup for week number 1.
DRS, it's such an interesting point about San Francisco because talent-wise on paper, with the consistency we have seen out of the 49ers the last half-decade in the National Football League, everything should be pointing up in a positive manner for the Niners entering 2024 once again. I will never forget seeing San Francisco lose its second Super Bowl to the Chiefs in the last 5 years, and still somehow, some way, when the markets became available early for 2024's NFL campaign, San Francisco was favored to win Super Bowl 59 in front of Kansas City, a 49ers team that was favored in all 20 games, including Super Bowl 58 last season in Las Vegas. The odds makers love the 49ers, and they are justified in thinking so. San Francisco, 2 Super Bowl appearances in the last 5 years, 4 NFC Championship game appearances in the last 5 years, and they have won the division 2 consecutive years in the NFC West. All 4 times they have reached the NFC title game. They have won double-digit games 3 of those 4 times over their win total that they enter this year with at 11.5. There is a lot to like about the 49ers, and yet, whether it's the pessimism with some of the roster maneuvers that have happened this offseason, at least the guys that are not there at this moment, Brandon Ayuk or Trent Williams, or just the lack of Super Bowl winning pedigree we have seen out of the 49ers in the last 3 decades, something holds me back from fully buying in or at least betting the short numbers on San Fran entering a new NFL season.
Yeah, and there is something to be said about that because, look, injuries are going to happen during the season. Devastating injuries to the 49ers, to any other team, that's going to derail a season. We get that. But we can only play with the deck that we're looking forward to coming into the season. So if you are putting into perspective of the NFC West as a whole, I understand. Like, McVay's a very good coach, and Matthew Stafford's a very good quarterback, but they're not nearly as talented overall as the San Francisco 49ers. Now, granted, you got to play the 49ers away, but you get the 49ers at home. And as I talked about also, the Arizona Cardinals, I think, are going to be much improved from what you saw last year, because why? Just Kyler Murray being back at a healthy level makes for a dynamic offense. And you drop in one of the best young wide receivers of the past 15 years that we've probably seen in college football. That is going to help. And the Seattle Seahawks are always tough. And I like the move from Pete Carroll to getting a new head coach, a defensive-minded guy, that maybe that defense is going to spring into action, be even better than it was last year. So there are a lot of counterparts here. And also, Ben, talking about how much fun that opening game is going to be against the New York Jets, where we're saying to ourselves, what happens if McCaffrey isn't 100% for that game? Or something happens with Brandon Ayuk where things haven't gotten worked out, or maybe just got worked out 4 days before the game. The same thing with Trent Williams. Those guys haven't been to practice all season long, just being dropped back in. Now, granted, same team, same locker room, same house. You're not moving, same playbook. I understand it. But there's something about getting those hundreds of reps in the off season, which includes the training camp era, that you need to be there before game number one. So I'm high on the 49ers. Do I think they win the NFC? They probably do. But there's not one of those things where you're entering the season, Ben, it's like, you know what? They're untouchable at this point. They should be able to run away with it. You know, I talk about Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes. Hey, who's on that team? Is Patrick Mahomes there? Yeah, they're going to win the AFC. It's obviously not to that level in San Francisco. Even though I thought they should have beat Kansas City last year in the Super Bowl. We'll see how it plays out this year, but I'm pretty high on the Niners, to say the least.
You know, it's really interesting, DRS. We give the Cowboys a lot of flack, and rightfully so. They won their last Lombardi Trophy in 1995. They have not even reached the NFC title game in the 28 NFL seasons since that point. San Francisco last won a Lombardi Trophy in 1994. Of course, the story of the NFC in the 80s and the 90s was that rivalry between the Cowboys and the 49ers. So San Francisco last won a Super Bowl in 1994. Now, 3 decades ago, they have reached the NFC Championship game 8 times, so that's much better than Dallas. They have played for 3 Lombardi trophies, but they have come up short since that last Lombardi trophy in 1994. It is not the same failure to that certain level that we have seen out of Dallas, but San Francisco has not been atop the mountaintop in the National Football League in 30 years. That is always the hope for the 49ers entering this season. Am I going to buy into that idea? I'm not entirely sure. But San Francisco's win total of 11.5 or the minus 190 price to win the NFC West are the strongest number at this moment to even see the postseason around the National Football League at minus 520. That I do believe in. San Francisco will have another golden opportunity this year. It's just a question on if they can capitalize, unlike a season ago.
Exactly correct. And we might know game number 1, how for real the 49ers can be. We understand it's a long season, but if they beat the Jets here and beat them in convincing fashion, like a touchdown or more, watch out for the Niners. But something in me says, you know what? If the Jets show up and able to knock out the 49ers, how much fun it will be on that Tuesday morning to talk about the New York Jets and where they're going this season. And same thing with the Niners.
Elsewhere around the NFC West next. One final point on the 49ers before we move elsewhere on Win Total Tuesday around the NFC West division. There are 3 games right now for the regular season where the 49ers have a price and a spread associated with it. The Week 1 opener at home in Santa Clara, Monday Night Football to end out Week 1 against Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets. The 49ers a 5.5-point favorite. Week 7, they host Kansas City in the Super Bowl 58 rematch between the 2 Super Bowl 59 co-favorites. San Francisco, a short 1.5-point favorite, but still the home favorite against KC. And then the week following against the Dallas Cowboys, a 4.5-point favorite against Dallas. All of that to say, Donnie, that much like last year, when the 49ers were favored in all 20 games, including the Super Bowl 58 defeat in Vegas to Kansas City, I expect the 49ers to be favored in each and every game the Niners play this season.
Yeah, just about. And also, you look at that later in the season, Ben, right around like Thanksgiving time. You play at the Green Bay Packers. A week later, you're at the Buffalo Bills. Then you get that week later at home, but it is against the Bears, but also a rookie quarterback that's had multiple starts under his belt and maybe careening towards the playoffs there. Then you take on a division opponent, the Rams. Then you go on the road to take on the Dolphins, then home against the Detroit Lions. Like, we're going to know what this team's made of, obviously early with game number 1 with the Jets, but I'm really looking forward to that mid-November to late December stretch here to see what the 49ers still have left in the tank. So when we say parity really means business in the NFL, it's true. First place team gets that first place schedule, and you're seeing some quality opponents on that list.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now let's go elsewhere in the NFC West. The Los Angeles Rams, a playoff team, a double-digit win team a season ago because Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp were healthy in the emergence of Puka Nacua as well. Can the Rams replicate that success once again? The win total is 8.5, albeit the over does have the heavy juice. In fact, LA has moved slightly in front of Chicago for the 7th best make playoff price of NFC teams. What does that mean? Of course, there are 7 teams that now make the postseason in each conference. The Rams, based on the odds makers, would have that slight edge over the Bears. Donnie, what is your expectation for Los Angeles in 2024?
It's a tough one for me. And not to say I don't think they can be a good football team. Like, no, not even a devil's advocate needed here. Let's just say they're all healthy, which includes Matthew Stafford, all the way through for 17 games. That's a playoff football team in the Rams that might even be able to challenge the San Francisco 49ers. But the same way I'm talking about the Niners, who I do think they have a quality football season and, quite frankly, maybe the most talented. But they're entering the season with a lot of question marks, some through injury, which is Christian McCaffrey, and some through players holding out. You never want to get that animosity like behind the scenes. They don't respect me. They don't. We still don't know what's going to happen with Brandon Ayuk. But again, talking about their left tackle, Trent Williams, we expect him to be back in camp. Let's just say everything goes right for the 49ers. And Matthew Stafford's hamstring injury, Ben, is not an issue week number 1 and moving forward. If you have a healthy, and again, Puka Nacua was banged up in training camp as well. Let's just say you get to the starting gate. Healthy Matthew Stafford, hamstring is fine. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Williams. Like, you have the tendency here with Sean McVay to have a high-octane, ready-to-rock offense, which is half the battle in the NFL. It is a younger defense, and you lose Aaron Donald. I understand that. But I'm not talking about the Rams on a stage of they can make a run to the Super Bowl. The expectations for me are competitive team week to week. When it's all said and done, 3 games left in the regular season, they're still vying for a playoff position, and maybe it even is for the NFC West. But there's a lot of question marks right now for me on an aging quarterback and a team that might not be as talented overall as the San Francisco 49ers. That's how I head into the season with the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, the Rams are a very compelling team. 7 years under Sean McVay, still regarded, and rightfully so, as one of the best head coaches in the National Football League. They have gone over 8.5 wins, winning at least 9 games in 6 of the 7 years, double-digit wins in 5 of those 7. They won a Super Bowl on home turf inside SoFi to end out 2021. But then injuries, a huge story of the 2022 campaign. Matthew Stafford injured, Cooper Kupp injured. They were just 5-12. Last year, Donnie, I expected positive regression. If health could be maintained for a team that won a Super Bowl the year prior to get back to things in 2023. The win total worked against me. I bet the over of 6.5. It closed at 5.5. The odds maker's not overly optimistic on Los Angeles. Of course, they went 10-7 and earned a playoff spot. You would have to assume Matthew Stafford will be healthy, but there are questions because of where he is in his career and the injury concerns from 2022. I still believe in this Rams team. I think they're going to be a winning football team. I think they will contend for a playoff spot, more than likely in a wild card scenario around the NFC. I still expect the Rams to be a postseason team come 2024's end. How about the Seattle Seahawks? New head coach and Mike Macdonald. Of course, it is no longer the Pete Carroll era up in the Pacific Northwest. 14 seasons under the man that loved to chew some gum. They now go to Baltimore's former defensive coordinator in Mike Macdonald. 7.5. The win total for the Hawks. The over has the juice. Again, flirting with 500. Do you think that's the reality for Seattle this season?
I do think it is the reality. And also, one of my favorite wide receiving cores in the NFL by a long shot, man. Lockett, Smith-Njigba, and Metcalf. I mean, 3 dominant wide receivers if you can just get time in the pocket. The reason I bring that up is it's not really a knock on Geno Smith. He's an average quarterback that has the tendency to sometimes play above average, and that's what you're looking for. Give me a quarterback top 15 in the NFL, top 20 with a decent defense, and away you go. You'll probably make the playoffs. But here's where the question marks pop up. Connor Williams, solid center. That's going to be a good benchmark for them this season. But outside of that, there are a lot of questions at guard and at tackle. Yeah. And if you're having those issues, you know how that usually turns out. That means you can't protect the quarterback, the wide receivers can't run the routes, and the running game with two quality running backs in the backfield. If you're just looking from a skill position layout, I love the Seattle Seahawks, but we know where games are won and lost. It's in the trenches. That's my only knock on the Seahawks. But I do expect them, again, to be competent on a week-to-week basis. Do I think they win that division, Ben? Probably not. But in the last couple weeks of the season, they're fighting for a playoff spot. I think we have them slotted appropriately here.
They won 9 games each of the past 2 years. In 14 seasons under Pete Carroll, only less than 7.5 wins 3 times. That means 11 times over 7.5 in the last decade and a half, virtually up in the Northwest. In the 3 times under 7.5, never less than 7. There has been consistent success in Seattle. Will it continue under Mike Macdonald? We'll continue the conversation up next. The Seattle Seahawks have a win total of 7.5. The over has the juice. The Arizona Cardinals have a win total of 7.5 as well, albeit the under juiced. I think, as we have said, Donnie, it speaks to the overall quality within the NFC West. This division is no cakewalk each and every time you play your divisional mates. How does it impact the overall records for all 4 of these clubs this season? Seattle's a compelling team under Mike Macdonald, of course, the defensive coordinator in Baltimore, under John Harbaugh after he worked under Jim as Michigan's DC the years prior. He turned Baltimore into one of the best defenses in the National Football League each of the past 2 years. He will hope to reinvigorate the defensive side of the ball up in Seattle. Jonathan Gannon enters his second year as the head coach in Arizona. Not much was expected a season ago. The win total, 4.5. The under had the juice. The Cardinals had the lowest win total entering 2023. Their franchise quarterback in Kyler Murray might miss the entirety of the year. At least that was the discussion. He came back to play 8 games. The Cardinals won a few of those. They ended up 4-13 a season ago. And although the overall win-loss record, nothing stellar to write home about for Jonathan Gannon in his rookie campaign as the head man in the desert, they were booked as an underdog, Donnie, were the Cards in all 17 games a season ago. And they were 9-8 against the spread, much more competitive than anybody anticipated around the National Football League. How does competition carry over to wins and losses in 2024?
Jonathan Gannon is a defensive coordinator. He's going to have that defense playing good football. Why? Because it just doesn't have the playmakers like so many other teams, particularly in the NFC West, have on defense. It's not a good secondary. Quite frankly, that's being nice. They're really a bad secondary. Pass rushing ability here, questionable at best. Average linebackers, okay. Now let's move it over to the offense for the Arizona Cardinals. Thank goodness they have Kyler Murray, who coming off the knee injury last year, took him some time to get back into the NFL games and getting it under his belt, right? Now you head into the offseason, he should be back up to the speed we've always seen Kyler Murray, and he's going to need it because the offensive line, Ben, flat out stinks. So I find myself looking at the Arizona Cardinals. Is it one of those teams that I want to bet on a week-to-week basis to say, let's just say they can cover a spread and or just win a football game? Not necessarily, but my goodness. If this isn't one of these teams that you're going to tee up on a week-to-week basis to say, I want quarterback props from the opposite team, wide receiver props and running back props for the opposite team? Yes. And also, from an offensive perspective, passing the football for the Cardinals. I love James Conner, but how many times are we going to be running in the fourth quarter when we're losing football games? Well, you know what I do love in that offense? It's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride. That tight end McBride. I mean, that guy is a man-child, and he's going to get a ton of targets this season. So from a betting perspective, once again, I'm not sure if I'm taking the spreads, essentially, on the Arizona Cardinals for good or bad. Sure. But if you want to look at totals and team totals against, this might be your landing spot right here because I expect Kyler Murray to put up decent numbers because they're going to be losing football games. The same thing was with the tight end and the wide receiver. But more importantly, the defense. They're going to give up a lot of points, man. This is one of those teams you need to be circling on a week-to-week basis to get some money back on.
It's one of my favorite things, though, Donnie, when you look for positive growth among a football team. For instance, take Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions in his rookie year in 2021. They were expected to win about 3 games. They were an underdog in all 17. They were the best cover team in the National Football League that season. They were 11-5-1 against the spread. Arizona, an underdog in all 17 last year, 9-8 against the number. And this is, for me, a guy that had an alternate win total under 3.5 for the Cardinals. 8 games started for Kyler Murray. Arizona won 3 of those 8. So 3 of the 4 wins came with Kyler back at the quarterback spot. But to Donnie's point, keep an eye on the totals for the Cards early this year. In the 8 starts that Kyler Murray made a season ago, 6 of the 8 games featured 40 or more points. All 8 featured at least 34. Arizona is a 6.5-point underdog for their season opener on the road in Buffalo. But it's part of the reason, Donnie, that I think you can look at either points out of Arizona, better play out of Arizona, or at Marvin Harrison Jr. Plus 650 for MHJ to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, to lead all rookie wide receivers. It is a plus 150 price in terms of yardage, 1050 and a hook. That is his season-long receiving yards prop that you would expect for the 4th overall pick to make an immediate impact with Kyler Murray delivering him the football. I do not think Arizona makes the postseason. I do not think the Cardinals can contend for that playoff spot. But I do think they will be able to keep games competitive and make the NFC West all that much more difficult. Hour 3 comes your way up next, live right here on this Tuesday.